See, we're getting really fancy with the technology here. I've got 2 cameras on the go, like some sort of psycho. Hey there, Jamie, guess what? It's Tuesday. Sarah down! That's making it into the cut, by the way. Hey there, Jamie, guess what? It's Tuesday. So if you're anything like my family and you watch a lot of the Space Network or any sci-fi program, or you just watch, popular news media on the interwebs, you'll no doubt have heard about the new TV series premiere that is going to revolutionize television as we know it. It's going to blow everything we knew out of the water. It's going to be just amazeballs. Amazeballs. The Expanse, a dark science fiction epic set in our own little corner of the universe, featuring the little men and women of civilization trying to do what they can to eke out a living in less than ideal circumstances, all the while trying to survive what is inevitably going to become a three-way revolution. Three-way revolution, in case you didn't translate my slur of speech there. With elements playing off of politics, drama, and thriller genres, I'd like to say that this series is setting itself up a bit of a high bar to achieve. There's been a lot of hype built over this, there's been a lot of excitement built over this, and we can only tell where it's going to end up. Especially since the goofs over at Entertainment Weekly had set this thing up as a Game of Thrones in space, which currently is really the best catch-all phrase to use when you're trying to go for there are politics, there are boobs, there's blood, and it's popular to the shareholders who want to get people interested because all the mindless peons see the word Game of Thrones and they think automatically it must be good. Because that apparently is what Game of Thrones is. That's a whole different argument for another day. I'll level with you. When I first saw this series, when I first turned on the TV to watch it, I was actually expecting this to flop in my face. I was expecting this to be not as good as all the hype had built it up to be. I expected the writing to be predictable, the characters to be generic, and the special effects to be at best. I'm glad to say so far that I was wrong. Or at least, so far, I'm wrong. So far, we've been introduced to at least a dozen named characters of at least satisfactory character depth. And while we are in a technologically advanced environment and setting, it's still familiar enough we can kind of grapple with the basics of the technology and the hurdles and the challenges that it faces without being overly obsessed with trying to figure out the nitty-gritty details of why everything works and how it works. And while some of the lore language is a little bit hard to understand and the foreign language is difficult to follow at the best of times, the problems that these characters are grappling with are still fairly easy for us to follow along with. He wants to maintain his current freedom. She wants to crack down on illegal activities happening all over the solar system. He wants to find the missing persons, and we're not really sure what she wants. I mean, she's had all of 2 minutes of screen time, and her dialogue can be summarized as, I don't want to be here, and Let's talk about something that generally worries me about the science fiction genre. Science fiction comes in one of 2 flavors. Flavor 1, the technology is more of the magical, let's just solve everything without explaining how it works, and it's just so wonderful and it doesn't really make any logical sense. Or, logistically complex and scientifically sound, but sometimes they spend a little too long focusing on the details and trying to ram all that information down your throat. Generally, the only thing that super nerdy people can really get their heads bent around. So far, The Expanse seems to be hitting that latter part without going too far over into the realm of trying to explain every little scientific detail with fancy technical language and all sorts of other crap that really, as a viewer, we don't care about so much. But some of the science they're including in the show is fairly scientifically sound without being overly complicated. I'll include a link in the thingy below for a video about microgravity and how it affects the human body and what it is like to be born in a microgravity or zero gravity environment. They seem to be keeping a fairly good tabs on that in the series as to what that would look like for people, and I appreciate that as a viewer, also as a nerd. Though the zero-G scenes seem to cut a couple of corners, they kind of look a little bit cheesy on occasion, a bit of slow-mo moonwalking that you can tell is just the actor moving slowly. The clothing seems to kind of act like it's normal gravity clothing, and the hair is surprisingly stationary in a zero-G environment when it could be going everywhere. The magnetic boots, anyway, I'm assuming the magnetic boots, seem to solve the problem of zero-G all the time. It allows the cast to walk around on the normal surface without being too bogged down with, oh look, we're floating. Now, as for a semblance of an overall plot for the series, things seem to be kind of in the air right now. We've been introduced to 3 separate but kind of connected plot arcs that probably will tie together a lot more cohesively in the next episode and a half, but until then, it doesn't really seem that what's going on has any relation to each other. The underlying narrative seems to be alluding to the fact that this revolution between the Belters, or the people who live in the asteroid belt, being miners for ice and other important minerals like that, because ice makes water, which is something I covered in a video of my own back in March. Link here-ish sort of thing to check that out. The Martians, who are humans who colonized Mars, not little green men. It might end up being little green men. We haven't actually seen any Martians except for one character, and he seemed pretty human to me, but we've seen all sorts of weird things in film, haven't we, world? The underlying narrative seems to be hinting at something a little bit more insidious and a little bit more conspiracy-esque than just rebellion between these three factions. At least that's what I can gather from the interviews with some of the castmates in a couple of behind-the-scenes things that I've seen after the first episode. As for a bit of a technical problem I have, some of the audio levels in this show aren't great. There are moments in the show when some of the cast members have very deep, low, very voices, and unfortunately gets drowned out with the ambient sound effects going on around them. It can be hard to make out specifically what they say, and it can kind of lead to a little bit of confusion. Also, as much as I love seeing foreign languages, whether they are fictitious foreign languages or realistic foreign languages, seeing those in any work of film or show, whatever, without subtitles accompanying them is a bit of a nuisance for me anyway. I understand you want to make it so that we don't understand what's going on, but it can be a bit of a distraction, especially when you have characters acting as translators immediately after they say it. Could you not just include the subtitles in there so that we kind of know what's going on? It'll save us about a minute or two of footage at the end of the video, which leaves room for more stuff. A minute or two is a lot of time, says the man who has spent a lot of time trying to trim minutes or two from a vlog so it meets a deadline. Now, on the note of characters, from what we've seen of the cast so far, which there have been a fair number of Canadian actors in the cast, which is, yeah, sweet. The cast seems tight. They all seem to have a very in-depth understanding of what their character is trying to achieve, where they're from, and what their underlying motivations for their actions are. It feels like the characters are genuine people, and not just two-dimensional personalities that you sifted through a hat and said, this character is brave, this character is nerdy. That being said, take all this with a grain of salt. As was said earlier, this is episode 1. Things can flop on its face so quickly in a series like this, whether that be from bad writing, plot holes, strange decisions for characters that seem really out of characters, and the thing that drives me the most nuts, which is when the plot introduces the deus ex machina of solutions through the main character being the chosen one and blah blah blah. You're all familiar with this, you've all seen this before. It's lazy writing and it makes for a very bad drama. However, if you're looking for a final verdict on what my thoughts on this show was, here it is as thus. From what I've seen so far, from episode 1, I am really enjoying what I'm seeing. The environment and the lore is interesting, the characters are compelling, and the plot line is pretty easy to get your head wrapped around, which means you have more focus to really enjoy what's happening with the characters. The show shows some really great promise, and I personally will be eagerly anticipating the next 9 episodes. I really like the show, but simultaneously, I'm bracing for a crash and burn. And as always, if you like this video, leave a big old thumbs up. If you didn't like it, leave a big old thumbs down. Be sure to check out on Tuesdays when I upload and Fridays when my sister uploads. And she'll be posting in her video this Friday an announcement about our channel. I kind of mentioned it in the last video. We may possibly be doing 3 uploads a week. We will have confirmation in a couple days.
I'm sorry.
You should be. Until then, TTFN, ta-ta for now.